Palestinian families are being forced apart by controversial legislation which divides married couples.
The Israeli government passed legislation that seriously affects anyone that happens to fall in love across the wall.
The human cost is great.
It affects you. It's like you are living in a state which sees you as a security threat, and no matter what you do, you will be a threat. You will be a third-class citizen.
This week's In Focus looks at the lives of those affected and the truth behind the letters of the law.
We're in Jerusalem Al-Quds, and here you can see a separation barrier that severely restricts the movement of people. In many cases, it keeps them apart completely. But despite it being a physical barrier, it has not severed the ties of family, friendship and love between Palestinians.
I could see how the wall here cuts right through a Palestinian community. Those living on each side used to be neighbours. But what is now next door is the cold shadow of an 8-metre-high wall, topped with barbed wire.
In 2003, just 1 year after the separation barrier was built, the Israeli government passed legislation that seriously affects anyone that happens to fall in love across the wall.
The law means that those living on different sides of the barrier can face a life of separation, even after getting married.
We're closer to the wall now and on our way to see Abdul Wahab. He lives just on the other side of this point of the barrier, which used to be a main road leading to the town where he lives. He married a woman who lives on this side.
Following the legislation, they can no longer live together. The order is strictly enforced by the Israeli military, who stand guard at checkpoints at various parts of the wall. We travelled to exactly the same section on the other side to see him, which would have previously been just a few steps away.
We've come all the way around from Jerusalem Al-Quds through the checkpoint, and we're now in Abu Dis. It's taken us roughly about half an hour to get to this point.
When we arrived in Abu Dis, Abdul Wahab was leaving work. He works with an organisation that promotes human rights in the town. He invited us to his house.
And this is Ilya. When we met together and we get married, I did not even imagine that we will reach a position here in Abu Dis. We will be cut like this from Jerusalem. As for somebody like me, whom I was born in the old city in Jerusalem, I had my school education in Jerusalem. I worked in Jerusalem in like 7 or 8 hotels in Jerusalem for nearly 10 years. I graduated from a university in Jerusalem, and I get married from Jerusalem to complete the picture like everybody, because we are part of Jerusalem. In 2003, the Israelis start to build the wall. So what I feel, I don't believe that this partnership could have started from the beginning if we both knew that they would cut us like this.
How much time did you have together, and what was it like for you?
Like for myself, I spent long enough in this marriage that I did not believe that I'm married.
Palestinians living in Jerusalem Al-Quds are allowed to travel into the West Bank. I asked what would happen if his wife lived with him in Abu Dis.
Since she holds the Jerusalem ID, it became obvious for people in Jerusalem that if they lift the borders of the municipality and live outside, that they will lose their IDs, which means that they will not be considered West Bankers. The only document that they will still keep is a Jordanian passport, which means that they have to cross the borders outside the country if they lost their Jerusalem ID. So the risk that she faced, I believe, is not just losing a Jerusalem ID or having another color of ID, but losing her opportunity to be in Palestine.
In 1948, more than 700,000 Palestinians fled from their homes to other parts of the country or abroad. The land in which they used to live was claimed as Israel. In 1967, Israel occupied the remaining sections of Palestine, meaning they have military control over the land, even though Palestinians govern the area. However, during that year, East Jerusalem Al-Quds was not just occupied, but total Israeli governance was imposed there. In legal and social terms, it had become part of Israel. This claim over East Jerusalem Al-Quds is not recognized by any international government, including the United States. Roughly 20% of the population of Israel, including East Jerusalem Al-Quds, are Palestinian.
لا يا لا لا شو بتسوي؟ قولي لي شو بتسوي؟ شو هذا؟ شو هذا؟ بلاك. هذا مش بلاك، هذا جرين. كيف صار بلاك؟ هذا جرين. And his obsession of technology and computers.
Tell me how many days you have with your children and how do they go and visit their mother?
They spend the weekend with their mother, starting from Thursday, Friday, and they return back on Saturday. Believe me, it's not safe for a child to travel alone like this. They are telling me million stories about soldiers asking them different questions and ask for extra proofs and saying that you are liars and you have no rights. And just imagine if in one point the Israeli soldiers on the checkpoints, which can be, simply decide not to allow them through. They can't return back, the bus can't return back with them. They will be left on that checkpoint where I can't reach, and there's no way to communicate with them. So it's a complete risk, but I can't cut them from their mother, and this is why I'm keeping, sending them weekly.
He told me that he had been jailed for taking part in the first Palestinian uprising. I asked why.
It's the first intifada, you see. We used to be kids, school kids, and they said that the Palestinians start an uprising, and you have to be involved in a way or another, even if you did not choose to. It will come to your house. So we used to join peaceful demonstrations and throwing stones, and it's the fact is not why are you arrested, what exactly they charge you.
What will be the future for your children?
You watch them growing up and they start to ask questions why. Simply it's not easy to convince Ilya, my little one, that I'm throwing her in a bus going to Jerusalem alone, because she knows that I will never do that if there's an opportunity. She can't understand, of course, but she believes that I will never leave her like this, except if there's a huge thing which she can't understand. I named her Ilya, which is an old name for Jerusalem. So she is Jerusalem. This is my Jerusalem. If they did not allow us to go to Jerusalem, then we have our Jerusalem in our house.
I wanted to find out more about the legislation, so I met Bill Van Esveld from Human Rights Watch.
Because Israelis are banned from being able to marry people from the West Bank, Gaza, or other Middle Eastern countries and have them be able to come and live inside Israel with the family. The law actually applies to all Israeli citizens. So if you were a Jewish Israeli citizen and you wanted to marry a Palestinian from the West Bank or Gaza, you would also be prevented from doing so. However, that almost never happens. There are rare, very rare examples, but of course the most common thing is for Palestinian citizens of Israel to want to marry Palestinians from their extended networks, family networks, so on, from the territories. So the group impacted by this is very clearly defined. It is disproportionately affecting, the 1.5 million Palestinians living inside Israel as citizens.
He raised concerns about the blanket ban on citizenship or permanent residency for an entire group of people based on where they live, and said that the reason being given for this decision is to safeguard Israel's security. I went to meet Sausan Zaher, a Palestinian human rights lawyer who has been petitioning against the legislation.
I'm Jasmine, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. تفضلوا.
Thank you.
I asked her how many families are affected by this law.
We have in 10 years almost, we have a data of more than 130,000 applications. So this is why we can estimate that we're talking about more than 100,000 families. Where we argued that there is a breach of right to a family life and right to equality, and we demanded that the law should be cancelled because it is not constitutional. We mainly said that it's arbitrary, and it's like arbitrarily viewing everyone as a security threat, and this is why it is not proportionate.
She believes the court's decision, by limiting who Israeli citizens that want to stay in Israel can marry, was also an indicator of the legal system's view of Palestinians living inside Israel.
What kind of impact does it have on Palestinians and Arabs that live in Israel and hold Israeli citizenship, like yourself, to be marginalized in this way?
It affects you. It's like you are living in a state which sees you as a security threat, and no matter what you do, you will be a threat. You will be a third-class citizen. It's frustrating as a lawyer, of course, as a human rights lawyer. It's combining between the two frustration of living in a place that views you as an enemy, and you can't prove otherwise, and it's also frustrating because you are a human rights lawyer and you believe in human rights values, and you cannot get there, and you see that the discourse that the court is leading to is totally in a contradictory path.
It's been a day since we came to see Abdul Wahab here at his house, and today's Thursday, the day that every week his 3 children take the bus alone to see their mother in Jerusalem Al-Quds. I've come to take this journey with them and see what it's like for them.
We saw the bus approaching along the separation barrier.
We're on the number 36 bus now. I'm with Ilya, Mohammed and Yasar. We're going to cross over the checkpoint together to the other side of the wall, and then they'll walk from there to their mother's house.
We got to the checkpoint and the bus pulled over. People started to get off, and a soldier got on the bus and shouted in Hebrew, "Stop filming." For the cameraman's safety, we had to turn off the camera.
They asked me to get off the bus and go through a separate walkway which was made up of wire and kind of like a cage. I had to walk down there. They checked my passport, asked me why I wanted to go to Jerusalem Al-Quds. In the meantime, the children's IDs didn't get checked because the soldiers are familiar with them now. They take the same bus every Thursday, and they recognize them.
According to Israeli officials, if Abdul Wahab had not participated in the first Palestinian uprising against Israel, he may have been eligible for a temporary permit to live in Jerusalem Al-Quds with his wife and children. This temporary permit, issued as part of a process called family reunification, needs to be renewed every 6 months, and in all cases where it is granted, it can never be upgraded to permanent residency or citizenship. I wanted to find out more about Israel's security concerns.
I'm on my way to meet Leah Semel. She's an Israeli human rights lawyer who defends Palestinians accused of violence in Israel.